So listen, I mean, what's the significance of this? Is this a vague spanner in the works? Is this really serious? Will it stop Trump standing for president?
No, it won't stop him standing for president. He is, of course, still on the ballot for the Republican nomination in 48 of the 50 states. And what we have is a patchwork here. Because each of the elections in the United States is not overseen by the federal government, it's overseen by the states. You've got Colorado and Maine saying, no, he cannot be on the ballot. But in recent days, you've got Michigan, Minnesota, and California saying, yes, he can be. So I think Trump will still remain on the ballot in the large majority of states. But here's the significance of Maine. It lies in two issues. The first is the Maine decision was not done through a court. It was done through the state government, through the Secretary of State. So it could set a precedent for other state governments to follow, which could mean that Trump does face a problem in some states during the primaries. But secondly, and I think the US media has kind of missed this, Maine is next door to New Hampshire. And New Hampshire is the first Republican primary, which is on January 23rd. And there's an immediate question raised here in terms of that local context. How will the voters in New Hampshire respond to the Maine decision? Will they rally around Trump as the supposed victim, like he likes to portray himself? Or will they actually see Trump as being increasingly, if not toxic, at least detrimental to the overall Republican Party, given all the legal issues, including the criminal cases, as well as these questions of the ballot disqualifications?
So it doesn't have to be significant, but it could actually turn out to be pivotal in many respects.
I think what I would be looking at is this, and that is that for a long time, I think Trump has been able to suck the oxygen out of the room because everything's Trump, Trump, Trump. And as you and I are talking about him right now, rather than talking about the other candidates and other issues. But it is significant that another candidate, Nikki Haley, the former U.S. ambassador to the UN, former governor of South Carolina, has surged in the polls for that first primary in New Hampshire. She was only at about 10%, but then she has surged up to almost 30% in one poll last week. If she finishes a strong second to Trump, then the narrative changes just a bit. Then it becomes an actual competition rather than a coronation for Trump, as we had to Haley's state of South Carolina. And if that's the case, if there's oxygen in the room for Nikki Haley and other Republican candidates, then that question of Trump's liability may loom larger. And this is where the Maine decision, as well as Colorado, would take on some significance.
Now, of course, Mr. Trump argues, and he's done this for a long time, that this is a stitch-up. This is, he talked about draining the swamp, and if you ever wanted a clearer example of what the swamp, this mysterious thing, will do, then here it is right there. Whether it's in the police, whether it's in the courts, whether it's even in the White House, the Secret Service, these underpinning sort of establishment networks exist, and they hate people like Donald Trump. Now, when he says that, his fan base, of course, are very mobilized by that. It's like a drug to his fan base. They believe it, they run with it, and he becomes ever more popular. How long can he keep that up, though?
Well, Trump has run this show of being the victim while at the same time being a bit of a bully for decades. He did it as a businessman, as he faced multiple legal cases and indeed bankruptcies. He did it as he faced many questions, even as he was president, including 2 impeachments with significant evidence behind them. And he'll do it again. But I don't think I'm going to go down the route of an analyst of just saying Trump base, Trump base, Trump base. Some people will buy into this. I know some of them. They're my relatives. Some people will not buy into it. I think what's more important here is this is Donald Trump versus the U.S. system. Let's be very honest here. If you want to talk about the swamp is when you try to overthrow the U.S. system, when you try to overturn an election, when you fraudulently claim that there was a rigged election and there's no evidence for it, and then you possibly incite people to attack the Capitol. That's the politics of the swamp.